trying to share something really personal, like a deep belief with someone. It can be one of the trickiest, most intimate things we do.
Oh, absolutely. It's more than just words, isn't it? It's about connection, timing.
And listening. And then, maybe even harder, what happens after?
Right.
If someone's actually open to exploring this new idea, how do you, support them? How do you navigate all that?
It's a fascinating area. You're touching on communication, empathy, but also like a real long-term commitment. It goes way beyond just one talk.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've got this really interesting guide. It's called Dare to Share, and we're focusing specifically on session 3.
Dare to share. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not just about, starting the conversation. It's like a whole playbook for these kinds of sensitive discussions. And crucially, what you do after someone shows interest. We're looking at it as a sort of case study in structured communication and mentorship.
That's interesting. So it anticipates the follow-through.
Yeah.
Because often that's where things can fall apart, right? The initial excitement fades. Totally. And this guide seems to map out responses to almost everything, from someone saying yes right away to, well, needing more time. It gives practical steps for each scenario.
So it's like a strategic plan, but for something deeply personal.
Pretty much. So our mission here is to unpack this systematic approach. It's specifically about sharing the gospel message, but also that whole ongoing follow-up process with new believers.
Okay.
You'll get a real sense of the structured communication, the mentorship ideas, how they build community. It covers everything from that first shared thought right through to sustained growth. It's pretty detailed.
And that raises a broader point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do you prepare for such a wide range of reactions when you're trying to persuade or mentor someone in any context?
Yeah.
This guide seems to say, don't leave it to chance.
Right. Okay, so let's get into it. The guide starts by asking you to think about the best decision you ever made, setting a personal tone. Then, after presenting the specific acceptance prayer.
A prayer to embrace the faith, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It tells you to ask very directly, would you like to pray and receive Christ into your heart? And then, just wait. Silence.
That waiting part is key. And then the guide gives you actual paths depending on the answer. It's almost like scripts for different conversational terms.
It really is. So if it's a big enthusiastic yes, you're meant to say something like, that's great, let me go through the prayer again, and this time you pray along with me. You lead them phrase by phrase.
Okay, so guiding them directly.
But what if they're more private? Say they want to pray silently.
What does it suggest then?
Then you offer them the booklet with the prayer and suggest they read it and pray it right there by themselves.
Okay. Adapting to their comfort level.
And there's another option. Maybe they say they want to pray later on their own time.
Right. That happens.
In that case, the guide suggests being encouraging but clear. That is fine. Let me suggest that you take the booklet with you and read through it again before the day ends. And when you come to the prayer, pray the prayer to the Lord.
So still providing structure and a time frame, but respecting their pace. It's flexible within the objective.
Exactly. It's not pushy, but it guides. It shows that even with a clear goal, how you get there can vary.
That adaptability seems crucial for genuine connection.
But, okay, here's the big one. What if the answer is, I am not ready to accept Christ? That must come up a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. In any situation where you're introducing a big change or idea, that's a common response. So what's the advice?
Don't just stop there. The guide says you pivot. You say, let me show you what will happen when you do invite Christ into your life.
Shifting focus.
Yeah, you move to what the guide calls the promises part. Sections that describe the benefits or positive outcomes of making that decision, often using future tense, like this will happen.
So the idea is maybe the hesitation comes from misunderstanding or not seeing the relevance. You clarify the what's in it for me, so to speak.
Right. Trying to bridge that gap. So after explaining these promises, you ask again if they want to accept Christ, if they say yes this time.
You go back to the prayer options.
Exactly. But if it's still a no,
Then what?
then it shifts to respectful closure. You say something like, I respect your decision. If at a future time you may be ready, you know how. Thank you for letting me talk with you. And then I'll offer to leave the booklet.
Okay, so leaving the door open, providing the resource, but respecting their autonomy. No pressure, no guilt. That's vital.
Absolutely. And then it gets into these case studies, which are honestly so relatable for any kind of belief-sharing conversation.
Oh, like real-world example.
Yeah. Case study #1. A friend interrupts and says, basically, how could it be so simple? I was raised believing I had to do all these religious duties to be saved, Does my whole life's effort mean nothing? That's unfair.
Wow, yeah. That hits on deeply ingrained beliefs and traditions clashing with a new message. That's a tough one.
It is. It forces you to think about how to respond with empathy, but still hold your ground, acknowledging their background without, necessarily agreeing it's the only way.
It's like in business, someone saying, we've always done it this way, when you propose a change.
Totally. Then case study #2 is the person who says, look, I don't want to hear this. I'm not religious. I'd like my life, eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I don't need Jesus.
The contentment objection. I don't see a need for what you're offering. That happens everywhere, not just religion. Marketing, sales.
Right. The guide implies you need empathy here, understanding they might genuinely not feel a need right now. Sometimes the timing just isn't right for the message to land.
You can't force someone to feel a need they don't perceive.
And case study #3 is really interesting. A friend listens well, asks questions, seems engaged.
Okay, sounds promising.
But when it comes to the prayer, she says something like, wow, I'm happy this works for you and changed you. That's great. But I follow a different religion, and it makes sense to me and makes me a good person too. I respect your belief. Keep sharing it.
Oof. That's a respectful refusal based on having their own path. That's powerful.
It really is. And it underscores the guide's theme. Meet people where they are, respect their choice, keep the relationship, don't burn bridges. It's a universal lesson.
Definitely. So that covers the initial sharing part with all its potential twists and turns.
But now, this is where, for me, it got really fascinating. The section on following up on a new believer.
Okay, the what next?
Yes. The guide asks, why is follow-up essential? And then it uses this analogy. Just like babies, new believers need the proper care and the right spiritual feeding from their spiritual parents. It argues you can't just lead someone to Christ and then leave them alone.
That's a strong metaphor. Spiritual babies needing immediate feeding. It frames follow-up not just as nice, but as absolutely critical.
And it gets specific about the timing. It warns that most believers will already suffer spiritual dryness a few days after coming to Christ, like a dip in enthusiasm,
Yeah, buyer's remorse, or just the initial high wearing off, happens with any big decision.
So it insists follow-up must be done immediately and the ideal time, within 48 hours.
48 hours, wow, that's really quick.
Isn't it? It shows they understand that critical window for reinforcing a new commitment before doubts or old habits creep back in. That principle applies way beyond religion.
Absolutely. Strike while the iron is hot, essentially. So what does that immediate follow-up look like?
It could be simple coffee, an email, a call. They even give a sample script. Something like, hey, friend's name, when you prayed today, you started a relationship with Christ. I want to walk with you as you grow. I meet with friends on daytime at place to learn about God together through Bible study, prayer, hanging out, interested.
So straight into community building, connecting them to a support system right away. That makes sense for integration into any new group or practice.
Exactly. And this links to the bigger picture. The guide says the goal isn't just getting a yes. It's fulfilling the mandate to make disciples, guiding people through a whole growth process.
It's about sustainable change, not a one-off event. A much bigger commitment.
Right. And they lay out a 4-stage process for this discipleship. It's called CCF's discipleship process. First stage, engage.
Engage. Okay, what does that entail?
It means actively reaching out with care to your own circles, family, friends, colleagues. Basically modeling the care you hope they'll experience. And even after someone accepts, you keep praying for them, caring for them.
So it starts with the mentor's own actions.
Yes, but here's the twist. The new believer is immediately encouraged to start engaging their loved ones too. They're asked, who do you know who needs this good news? And encouraged to start praying for them.
So it's about multiplication right from the beginning. Get them involved in the mission immediately. That's a smart way to scale any movement.
Definitely. Okay, second stage. Evangelize. This is interesting. It's less about outward evangelism by the new person and more about ensuring they are secure in their own salvation.
Okay, solidifying their own understanding and assurance.
Exactly. Because they might still struggle with old stuff or feel unworthy. So the guide suggests checking their grasp of the core message. This is where those really specific questions come in.
Like the scale question.
Yeah. On a scale of 0 to 100%, how certain are you that if you died today, you'd go to heaven?
Wow, direct. Trying to pinpoint their level of confidence.
And then the formula question, which is right. Faith plus good works, salvation, or faith plus nothing, salvation resulting in good works.
Okay, clearly designed to reinforce the idea that salvation is seen as a gift based on faith alone, not earned by actions, though actions should follow.
Precisely. They use Bible verses to back this up, like Ephesians 2:8-10, emphasizing it's by grace through faith. And they encourage memorizing other verses for reassurance.
So it's about building intellectual conviction alongside the initial emotional decision.
And also acknowledging that struggles will still happen, but providing a path for dealing with them, like confession. It also suggests looking for evidences of their new life, changes in behavior, citing verses about transformation.
So it connects belief to tangible life changes. That makes sense. Transformation should be visible, not just internal.
Okay, stage 3, EQIP. This is about spiritual growth, maturity. Back to the baby analogy. First you feed them, then you teach them to feed themselves.
Spiritual disciplines, right?
Yeah. Yep. Daily quiet time, prayer, memorizing teachings, and even tithing financial contribution.
And community comes back in here too, I bet.
Big time. The importance of the small group, the D group they call it, is stressed. The guide says growth cannot happen apart from relationships, using verses like Hebrews 10:24-25 about meeting together to encourage each other.
Makes sense. Peer support and accountability are huge for sticking with anything new.
Plus, they recommend structured learning, like going through these GLC books, Bible lessons designed to build a strong foundation. It's like a curriculum.
So it's very systematic, not just informal chats, but actual structured education within a community setting that's quite comprehensive.
It really is. And that leads to the final stage, 4, empower.
Empower. Okay, what's the goal here?
Getting the new believer to spiritually multiply, to pass it on. The guide says it's never too early to introduce the idea of the Great Commission, sharing the message widely.
So completing this cycle, from being reached to reaching others.
Exactly. They encourage them to start sharing by taking the same training module, dare to share themselves, and start serving by finding a role within the church community using their own gifts.
It's about fostering active participation and leadership, not just passive reception. And the mentor stays involved.
Yeah, the guide mentions coaching continues for at least 3 months, making sure the disciple is praying, caring, sharing, and inviting others into their own group. It keeps the cycle going.
Wow. Okay.
So when you step back, we've journeyed through this whole process from that initial, potentially awkward sharing moment
Right, navigating the yes, no, maybe later.
to handling specific objections based on prior beliefs or just plain disinterest.
Those case studies were very revealing.
And then realizing the sheer weight placed on follow-up, that spiritual baby idea in the 48-hour window, really stick with you.
It highlights how crucial immediate reinforcement is for any new decision or belief to take root. That feeling of spiritual dryness is probably universal after any initial peak experience.
And then we unpack that whole 4-stage discipleship process. Engage, evangelize, equip, and empower.
Yeah. Engage by modeling care and getting the new person involved early. Evangelize by ensuring their own understanding is solid. Equip with disciplines and community. And empower them to repeat the process. It's incredibly structured.
It truly is. This deep dive shows such an intentional, long-term commitment to fostering transformation, really leveraging psychology and relationship.
It really does. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Beyond this specific context, what can we learn from such a comprehensive framework?
How so?
Well, think about nurturing any kind of significant change, adopting a new health habit, learning a complex skill, integrating into a new company culture, even just shifting one's political thinking. How do we ensure that initial aha moment, that first decision, doesn't just fizzle out?
Right. How do you build that bridge from initial understanding to sustained engagement, deep mastery, and maybe even getting that person to teach or inspire others in whatever field it might be?
Right. Exactly. What does truly effective, long-term follow-up and empowerment look like across different areas of human growth and learning?
That's definitely something to chew on. Think about that until next time.